Some families hide heirlooms, others hide hell itself. Tonight, we're diving into 5 true horror stories about family secret stories buried for decades. Stories whispered about at funerals. Stories that still haunt the descendants who dared to dig them up. These aren't ghost tales. These are blood-deep mysteries, psychological horror, and real encounters with things that should have stayed forgotten. Let's begin. If you're brave enough. First up, a story called The Room My Mother Warned Me Never to Enter. When Leah's mother died, the house passed to her. It was an old, creaky place, filled with memories she had spent years trying to avoid. But her mother's final words, whispered with a strange, desperate urgency, stayed with her. Never open the attic. No matter what you hear, it's easy to promise something like that, isn't it? But when you're alone in a silent, grieving house, every sound amplifies. The first night, Leah heard a soft, dragging sound from directly above her head, across the ceiling. She told herself it was just the house settling, maybe an animal on the roof. The second night, the dragging was back, but this time it was accompanied by whispers. Faint, guttural, like words trying to form but getting stuck in a dry throat. She barricaded her bedroom door and tried to sleep, her heart pounding against her ribs. On the third night, the whispers stopped. Instead, there was a knock, a single, distinct knock, coming from the inside of the attic door. That was it. Logic, promises, fear, they all evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming, gnawing curiosity. She had to know. She grabbed a flashlight, pulled down the attic ladder, and pushed the door open. The air that rushed out was cold and smelled of dust and something else, something sickly sweet like decaying flowers. The attic was mostly empty, just a few dusty boxes. But in the center of the room, there was a tiny wooden chair facing the wall. And sitting in it was a doll that looked exactly, terrifyingly, like a younger version of Leah. It had the same brown hair, the same faded blue dress she remembered from an old photograph, and even the small, faint scar above its eyebrow from a childhood fall. Her blood ran cold. Pinned to the doll's dress was a small, yellowed note. Her mother's familiar handwriting was shaky, frantic. It read, "I kept her quiet. Now it's your turn." Leah stumbled back, her mind reeling. Kept too quiet. What was her turn? She slammed the attic door shut, locking it, and ran back to her bedroom. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening. And then it started, the soft dragging noise. But this time, it wasn't coming from the attic. This time, it was coming from inside her bedroom. Our second story is called My Father's Real Family. Dev had always seen his father as a statue, a figure of strict discipline, cold and unreachable. Their relationship was built on a foundation of silence and unspoken rules. When his father passed away from a sudden heart attack, Dev felt less grief and more a strange sense of release, but that feeling didn't last long. While sorting through his father's office, Dev found a hidden ledger. It detailed monthly payments, thousands of dollars, sent to the same address for over 20 years. The memo on each transaction was the same: containment, a second family, an affair. Dev's mind raced. He expected a scandal, but the truth was something far more horrifying. Driven by a need to understand the man he never really knew, Dev drove to the address. It was a rundown house in a forgotten part of town. He knocked. The door creaked open, and a woman stood there. Her face was a mask of chronic exhaustion, her eyes sunken and hollow. The moment she saw Dev, a flicker of sheer terror crossed her face. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She tried to close the door, but Dev pushed past her, and then he saw him. In the dim, musty living room, there was a boy. He looked to be about 12 years old, and he was an exact replica of Dev at that age. The same dark hair, the same facial structure, the same intense eyes. But this boy was chained to the wall, a heavy iron cuff around his ankle. The woman started to tremble, tears welling in her eyes. Your father, he said he couldn't let him out. Ever, she choked out. He said, the first version escaped. Dev stared, unable to process her words. The first version? Escaped? He was the first version. He backed away slowly as the boy chained to the wall looked up, a smile spreading across his face. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was too wide, too sharp, too predatory. In a voice that was a chilling echo of his own, the boy whispered, I've waited years to meet you, brother. And then the chains began to rattle violently. Next, we have a story about a place that wasn't supposed to exist. The basement my grandparents pretended didn't exist. Growing up, Arya spent summers at her grandparents' sprawling, antique-filled house. There was one rule she always found strange. Her grandparents insisted the house had no basement. They'd laugh it off, saying it was built right on the foundation. But when they passed away and Arya inherited the property, she found the original blueprint tucked away in a dusty drawer, and the blueprint told a different story. There was a basement, a very large one. She searched for days and finally found it. Behind a heavy oak bookshelf in the library, the wall was hollow. Prying it open, she discovered a door, sealed shut with bolts and thick, rusted chains. The moment she broke the final lock and the door swung inward, she felt a tangible shift in the air, as if the entire house took a deep, shuddering breath. She descended the stone steps into the darkness. The basement didn't look like a storage area. It looked like a classroom. There were rows of tiny, old-fashioned school desks and chalkboards lining the walls. But everything was wrong. Each small wooden chair had leather straps on the arms and legs. The chalkboards weren't covered in lessons. They were covered in names. Dozens of names written in a frantic scrawl. Most of them were crossed out with thick, angry lines. Her heart stopped when she saw it. Near the bottom of one board was a name that hadn't been crossed out. Her mother's name, just sitting there, waiting. On what looked like a teacher's desk at the front of the room, an old journal lay open. It was her grandfather's handwriting. One entry read, Class of 1962, failed containment. Level 2 stability holds. Another, from decades later, chilled her to the bone. Arya shows early signs. The final page was blank. At least she thought it was. As she stood there, frozen in horror, she noticed fresh chalk dust on the floor. She slowly turned to look at the chalkboard behind her. New words had appeared, glowing faintly in the gloom. Welcome back, student. From the back of the room, a desk creaked loudly, as if someone had just sat down. Our fourth story is about a phantom limb of a family tree, the baby my aunt swore never existed. Every family has inside jokes. For Eve's family, it was the baby. Whenever her Aunt Carol got flustered or upset, someone would mutter, Don't worry, it's not like the baby. Aunt Carol would turn pale and immediately shut down. She swore up and down she'd never had a child. The family just assumed it was a painful story from her youth, a miscarriage perhaps, and learned not to press it. After Aunt Carol passed away, Eve was tasked with cleaning out her small apartment. In the back of a cluttered closet, she found a locked drawer. She pried it open. Inside, nestled in yellowed tissue paper, was a collection of plastic hospital bracelets. They all had her Aunt Carol's name on them, and they were all dated. One for January, one for February, one for March. Over the course of a year and a half, 18 bracelets in total, one for every month. It was impossible. No one is hospitalized for a day every single month for that long. That night, trying to sleep in her aunt's guest room, Eve heard it. A soft crying like a newborn. At first, she thought she was imagining it, a product of a sad and confusing day. But the crying grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from inside the walls. She got up, following the sound down the hallway to her aunt's old bedroom, which had been left untouched. The closet door was trembling slightly. With a deep breath, she pulled it open. The crying stopped instantly. The inside of the closet was empty except for something on the back wall, written in what looked like red crayon, at the height a small child could reach, were the words, "I'm still here, Mommy." Before Eve could even scream, she felt a small, impossibly cold hand grab her ankle. And finally, a story that questions the very nature of identity, the voice that sounds like me. When Sam's parents died, he moved back into his childhood home. He expected the crushing weight of loneliness and grief, the silence of empty rooms. What he didn't expect was hearing his own voice calling his name. The first time it happened, he was in the kitchen. He heard a clear, perfect imitation of his own voice call from the upstairs hallway. "Sam." He ran upstairs, thinking he was losing his mind, that grief was making him hallucinate. The hallway was empty. A few days later, it happened again. This time he was reading in the living room. "Sam, come here." The voice was identical to his, but there was an unsettling lack of humanity to it, a flat digital quality. It was a perfect mimicry, but it was hollow. Desperate for an answer, he started digging through old family videotapes, birthdays, holidays, family vacations. He watched them for hours, and then he heard it. In the background of a video from his 5th birthday, so faint he almost missed it, was the voice. It was whispering, not him, me. He checked another tape from a Christmas morning. There it was again, underneath the sounds of laughter and tearing wrapping paper. Not him. Me. His blood turned to ice. Tucked into the case for the very last tape was a note from his mother written shortly before she died. Her handwriting was a panicked scrawl. "If the voice finds you again, don't answer." We raised the wrong one. That night, huddled in his bedroom, the voice was louder than ever. It wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was right outside his door. "I'm the real Sam," it said, its tone pleading, yet menacing. "Let me in." Sam stared at the door, his heart hammering in his chest, and then he saw the brass doorknob begin to turn. Slowly, silently, from the inside. Family secrets aren't always scandals or forbidden romances. Sometimes they're prisons, creatures, or shadows wearing your face. If you want more true horror stories, dark mysteries, and chilling encounters, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and I'll be waiting with more nightmares you won't forget.